Many people are saying that Sapphire was the clear winner in Set 7 ARCHAZIA'S Island, and in this video we're going to be reviewing the Sapphire cards to determine what really makes it so good, explaining some of the more powerful interactions. If you've watched my channel already, you've seen we've tested quite a few things already with the new set, new cards, new interactions, etc. If you want to see the review of the dual ink cards, you can check out the earlier ink colors that I've posted already on my channel. So like I have an amber review, an amethyst review, etc. Those dual inks are covered in there. But just to quickly go over what I think in the Sapphire pairing is actually a very good dual ink. If you're going to play Amber Sapphire, Puppies seems to be the way to go, and all four of these cards are going to be good in that deck. And you know, Perdita even got a beautiful promo there with the white background. In Sapphire Amethyst, I think this Elsa could potentially be decent, but probably not. And the Sven is a good addition, giving another rush and reducing strength character to the Blurple deck. The Emerald Sapphire deck, I think, is the winner so far. You could play a Floodborn oriented version. I don't think you play Yokai because you can just ramp instead of worrying about having to pay one less anyways. There's just more efficient cards to play. But the Hero Hamada is actually a really good shift card that you can play out. Quest for 3 has some really good abilities there. And then the Baymax, I think, is really good. And this Ink Geyser, in my opinion, just propels Emerald Sapphire to another level. When this Belle came out, I said, you know, it's going to take a lot to make this Belle viable. You're going to need a really good shift target, and you're going to need to make a item-focused Sapphire deck viable again, because we saw it shift towards the Shark variant with actions and whatnot. And man, we'll review it in this video. The Belle that they got is pretty good, and it makes this Belle and this archetype whole, like, you know, focusing around this Belle actually decent. The Beagle Boys is also pretty decent in my opinion. The Beast and the Maurice's Workshop, I would say no. But yeah, that's kind of a quick recap there. Sapphire, a lot of good dual ink cards. It's good with a lot of pairings. But with that said, let's jump into the main cards here. First of all, we have a rare Clarabelle, 4-cost inkable 3/3 body with support, quest for 2, and your other characters with support get +1 strength. Probably not going to be played. It is potentially another card that you could play for the Emerald Sapphire because you have the Emerald Clarabelle that is, you know, shiftable onto this, but you wouldn't really want to shift on top of this when you have better shift targets in Emerald itself. So I would say this is probably not going to see any play. The big one is definitely the Scrooge McDuck, in my opinion. I could talk at length about this card. I think, personally, and I could be wrong here, I guess we'll see over time, when you look at a card like Scrooge McDuck, I think that if you're playing an item-oriented version of any kind of Sapphire deck, so this would exclude Ruby Sapphire, that is the Shark variant. It would exclude Blurple, because those decks don't play items. But if you're playing the item version of Ruby Sapphire, if you're playing Sapphire Steel, which again has a non-item version as well, I think Scrooge McDuck is an automatic 3 to 4 of in those decks. It's basically going to replace Grammatala. It's not near the power of Rapunzel, and why I make that comparison is because Rapunzel is a gatekeeper for Amber. You don't play Amber unless you have access to Rapunzel. The card is worth $75 Canadian now, I think, or something like that, and you need 4 copies of that card, right? If you don't have 4 copies of Rapunzel, Amber is basically locked out for you, you know, if you want to play it at a very competitive level. You can still obviously play it casually, but Rapunzel is the generically very powerful card that you need in Amber. Scrooge McDuck could be that for Sapphire, but for the item variation of these decks. And the same goes for the other legendary Tamatoa, and we'll cover that when we get to it. This card does a couple of things. First of all, you can technically play this out early if you get enough cheap items, because you can exert 4 items and play this for free. That's not really what you're trying to do. Even if you play this a little bit later or on curve, you still get a 4-cost 4/4 body out for free when you're exerting items that don't really matter. You can exert Popsicles, Fortispheres, Maurice's Workshops, you know, things that don't care to be exerted. You're just exerting them for free, basically, in order to play this character for free. You get a 4/4 body on board for free. That's pretty big and pretty significant in my opinion. It's something that even surpasses the value of Grammatala, which was a 4-cost body for 3/3 that you had to pay for ink on curve. And the Grammatala, while it did also replace itself, because you look at the top 2, take 1, put 1 to the bottom, this card scries 4 and it gets you an item. And you can argue if that's better or worse. I think it's better you dig deeper into your deck, and items are what you're looking for. We know that, like Ruby Sapphire, for example, wants to find Popsicle as soon as possible. If you don't have one already, this character will help you find it. You can also find other critical items if you want to play like the Ruby removal items, things like Poisoned Apple, Sword of Truth, things like that. You could scry for that. And if you played this character for free, you could potentially play the item that you get on that turn. This card also helps you scry for Lucky Dime. And again, you play it for free. It replaces itself. You can potentially play it for free. Even if you pay the cost to play it, it's not that bad. But being able to scry for a specific item is pretty good. Things like Vision of the Future, I've talked about how good that card is. It still costs you to, and it can kind of still be awkward to like try to play the Vision and then play what you pick up off Vision in the same turn, unless you're in the very late game. So this card does that first of all. Scries, replaces itself, gets you an item. You can play it for free. And if you watched my matches with this card, you saw how impactful this was. Being a 4/4 body means that it runs over a lot of cards, and when you pair this with the Sapphire Coil, you can reduce cards down so that they don't take out the Scrooge McDuck. And that means your Scrooge McDuck is favorably trading into things every turn. You played it for free. You got a replacement, probably a pretty good item out of it. I mean, to me, this card seems like it's going to be, you know, a staple in the item-based Sapphire decks. Now, the one thing you could argue is Grammatala is guaranteed, right? You definitely you 100% replace Grammatala. This card can technically whiff. You pick up 4. It's like Ariel, right? You pick up 4, there's no song there. All right, it all goes to the bottom. You pick up 4 here, there's no item. They all go to the bottom. It doesn't replace itself. But again, the potential to play this for free, getting a 4/4 body instead of a 3/3, it's pretty powerful, especially again when you combine it with that Sapphire Coil. So to me, it's a really good card. I know I spent a lot of time on it, but it's the card that for me I think is the most overlooked right now. I think people realize it's good, but just not how good it is. After testing, I just came to realize that yeah, this card is insane. The fact that you play it for free is just insane. I've said it like 10 times, right? Like it's crazy. Next up, we got Matthias. A 3/2 body for 2 inkable. That's pretty good. And your queen characters gain ward and it quests for 1. So this is overstated, I think, for its cost, and it has a nice little ability. Not bad for a common card if you're playing a queen-oriented deck. We already know of this Moana from the movie promo. It's actually a decent card for any future potential shifts. Yes, the 1 strength hurts, but a 3-cost inkable, 6 willpower, that's going to be hard to deal with if you run into like steel decks. For them to deal with, and then you have a good shift target for any future potential good Moanas coming later on. I don't think we have a legendary Moana yet, so we're probably due for one, and it's probably going to be pretty good if we've seen how power creep is going in this game so far, with now onto set 7. Next up, we got Monsieur, a 1-cost inkable 1/2 body. Whenever this character quests, you may banish an item of yours to draw a card. I would not play this. I know some people would be like, oh, this is like a cheaper Hiram. No, it's not. Hiram draws 2. It's a 1/6. It's very hard to take out without strength-based removal of Ruby. And Hiram also gets it on play, which is pretty big. I've talked about this endlessly on this channel, how coming into play effects are so much more superior to having to wait for the character to quest. So this card is just, you know, it's going to quest, it's going to banish an item, trade 1 card for 1 card, then you lose this card for nothing, so you're technically -2. You lose the item, you lose this card, you draw 1 card off the item, you lose tempo because you played this. It's just not a great card in my opinion, so I would pass. Next up, we got Gaten. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. A 3-cost inkable 3/4 quest for 1. Again, nothing too relevant there. And then we got the other, I would say, well, there's 4 big cards in Sapphire, and this is one of them. The Scrooge is another one in my opinion. But Belle, Apprentice, and Inventor, a 3-cost inkable, 3 strength, 3 willpower character that quests for 1. And the big thing about it is the ability, What a Mess. During your turn, you may banish chosen chosen item of yours to play this character for free. Now, this is going to be a good card, no doubt. It is far from a broken card, though, in my opinion. It depends on what kind of applications we see be used with it. Right now, it doesn't seem as powerful as some people are making it out to be. I think it is slightly overrated. Like, as an example, Strength of a Raging... not Strength. Let the Storm Rage On is a common steel song that is a staple in any kind of Amber Steel variant, right? And the common for that is going for like $6 to $7. Originally, it was going for like $2.50, $3. I remember because I picked them up at that price. This card going for like 10 bucks or more, in my opinion, is way overpriced. It's a common. And first of all, the actual non-foil should not be 2 bucks. They should be like 50 cents to a dollar. And then the foils will probably end up around 5 bucks, in my opinion. I think you play this in Sapphire Steel. I don't know if you will play it in Ruby Sapphire. It's going to depend on the meta. It's going to depend on your deck. But it's not an auto include into every Sapphire deck. First of all, obviously, you can only really play it in item-based Sapphire deck. So like Sapphire Amethyst and whatnot won't play this card. But it is still a good card. Don't get me wrong. It's still a very powerful card. Being able to play this out on one and have just a big body, contests Flynn, slows down aggro, acts as a wall, is at worst a decent quester in the first couple of turns before it can get challenged and traded out. It can proc certain items for when they're banished, like the unconventional tool, which is what she has in her hand here, to reduce the next item you play by 2, meaning you can play out a popsicle for free, play out a sapphire coil for free. So there's a lot of cool interactions, and again, if you watch my videos with this card in my Ruby Sapphire deck, you saw me execute some of those interactions. And what's really cool about this kind of card is that it also has application late game. How many times do you banish Popsicle for nothing so you can get it back with a Tamatoa or something? Now, if you have Belle, you have another way to banish your items aside from Hiram to trigger more advantage out of, just banishing your Popsicle for nothing. And then you quest with your Tamatoa, you get it back, or you play the new Tamatoa because you play this for free, right? Another card you play for free. It has a 3-cost card and a 4-cost card that you could potentially play for free in this ink pairing, in this ink color now, right? In the Scrooge and the Belle. And, you play it for free, and then you play your Tamatoa for 6, and you get back the item you just banished for the Belle, right? So it's like you didn't even lose any advantage, which is crazy. So a good card, slightly overrated in my opinion, overhyped, but still a very good card. Next up, we got some puppy support in Lucky Runt of the Litter. This is a 3-cost uninkable 1/3 body that quests for 2. Whenever this character quests, look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You may reveal any number of puppy character cards and put them in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So again, for a puppy deck, I mean, whenever this character quests, it couldn't be an on-play effect to give the puppy deck a little bit more gas, but it's a slow card. It's not going to be that great, in my opinion. It's uninkable. Yes, it quests for 2. It's a 1/3. I don't know. I guess they want to keep it casual, right? They don't want a casual deck dominating the casual scene, so it's understandable. We got a new 1-cost character in Dawson, Uninkable Puzzling Sleuth, a 1/2 body. It's a rare, and it says, be sensible. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, look at the top card of your deck. You may put it either on top or the bottom of your deck. So, again, nothing too significant. No one's probably going to play this. Yeah, it's just too fragile. You're going to just leave it there as a readied character. Sometimes it can quest maybe, but it's just really, like, are you wasting an uninkable slot on this? Are you wasting ink on this? Probably not. I just don't see a place for it given the other powerful cards that we have instead. And now we have the other pretty big consideration in terms of what makes Sapphire appear to be so broken. In the Tamatoa Happy as a Clam. Yeah, this card is going for a lot of money right now. And again, this is still pre-sale prices. I did buy one pre-sale. I'm not gonna lie. Hopefully I don't regret it, but I think this card is going to be very good. Where I talked up the Scrooge McDuck for a long time, I think the Tamatoa is the better card, but I think the Scrooge McDuck is a more widespread applicable card, if that makes sense. Like, I can play Scrooge McDuck virtually at any time, whether I pay the cost for it or play it for free. Ideally, you want to play it for free, but like playing it, scrying, it's a cheaper cost card. It's pretty even keel in terms of its strength and its willpower. It does a lot for you. Like, you can play it out at any point in time. This Tamatoa, you really only want to play it when you know you're going to get up to the 2 items back. Like, you want the 2 items back. That's mainly what it's going to like be really strong for. Because even if it gets dealt with on the following turn and you don't get to quest and play your next item for free, you're probably okay with that, because I mean, Sapphire decks have been just playing out Lucky Dimes and stuff anyways. But the ability for this thing to quest and play the item for free, it's kind of like when we saw Shark, and Shark was like, all these cool effects, and then it was like just randomly, you just gain lore when you play actions. It's like, did it really need that? When you look at Tamatoa, it's almost the same, and this is like power creep in motion, right? It has a really good ability on play, and if it just had that, the card would still be very, very good. But the fact that if it survives and you quest and you play an item for free, you play a lucky diamond for free, then you can hard play out the OG Tamatoa from chapter 1 and probably play out the items you recurred out of your discard because they're probably one cost popsicles and stuff, and then just lucky dime the big Tamatoa for game. Like if this thing lives, there's a good chance that you like if you're versing this or if you're playing this, if this thing lives after it drops, there's a good chance that if you played it, you're winning the game. If your opponent played it and you didn't deal with it, they're winning the game next turn. That's the impact this card has. So like I understand why this card is more expensive because it's that much more like impactful and better in terms of like winning the game and getting you that advantage. And it is a very good card and it's probably worth that. But I just think the Scrooge McDuck is overlooked as being the more well-rounded card. You can disagree with me. That's totally fine. I understand that. As a Yu-Gi-Oh player, I value things that have immediate utility and that aren't that aren't I shouldn't say a brick. They're not. It's not a brick. This card's not a brick. But like this card costs 6, so I'm gonna have to wait a little bit longer to play it. I don't have the ability to play it for free like I do with the Scrooge, and I want to make sure I play this when I can return some really good high value items. Right? I want to wait till I have like popsicles in my discard, etc. Which isn't going to be hard to do technically, to be fair. And this character questing, you can still play things like Maurice's Workshop and whatnot for free. You can play any item for free, right? Which is crazy. You can play like Sword of Truth and things like that. Really powerful interactions, not just lucky dimes. So you can build your deck a number of different ways to get really good value off of this card. And for that reason, like I said, it's very good. But like, I want to set this up when I can get really good value out of it, right? Whereas the Scrooge McDuck, it's the card that's going to get me value. This card does too, but like I have to set it up a little bit to get that value. And again, you could play the Scrooge McDuck out for the cost, or you can wait to get the value and like wait till you have your 4 items and exert them to play it for free, which again in a Sapphire deck isn't hard to do. So yeah, I mean I'm splitting hairs here on these two cards, but they're both very very strong, and that's probably the reason why Sapphire is being considered it's extremely broken. Like the advantage that you gain off of these cards, not just from them replacing themselves, like this card just gets a card from your deck, the Tamatoa the Scrooge gets a card from your deck. The Tamatoa gets items from your discard, so they generate advantage. But the fact that they're well statted for their cost as well, they're inkable, which is also huge. Like it's just insane. All right, we got our first Sapphire Steel card in Hey Hey Expanded Consciousness. This is a 5-cost inkable 1/5 body that shifts for 3. Quest for 2, has resist 1, so a lot of nice little abilities there. And it has a clear your mind ability. When you play this character, put all cards from your hand into your inkwell face down and exerted. So this is an interesting card. I can't see this card really seeing a lot of play. I think there are a couple of steel cards from like back in the day. Well, like the game's not that old, but that have effects when you have nothing in your hand. And so you could combo Sapphire Steel with that. I mean, you could still play wheel versions. You could play cards that on board just have advantages when they draw, like your Beast Tragic Heroes, your Hierums, even things like Beast Mirror, Maurice's Workshop, etc. So you can be like, I can play without a hand. I'd rather just ink the 3 cards in my hand at once and, just work off my board from there. This is not necessarily that bad of a card. It can actually do a lot for you. But again, I don't think this fits into the most competitive versions of Sapphire Steel. There are just better cards that you would continue to play. And this card, again, could be a liability because it depends on you having, those other draw engines set up already. I mean, it is inkable, but do you really want to play this on 5 when there's so many other competitive things to play in Sapphire Steel that are just better? Again, good for like a specific build, don't get me wrong, and like a casual play and stuff like that. So not everything needs to be the most meta competitive, and I'm not criticizing it for that. But I just think if you're looking at, well, do I put this in my Sapphire Steel deck? If you're looking to be the most competitive, I don't think so. I think you have to build around that card, and you'd be susceptible to any kind of disruption, right? So if your combos don't go off, you're kind of suffering because of it. Next up, we've got another rare in a 4-cost inkable 3/3 Kita Creative Thinker. Quest for 1, it has Ward, and it has the ability to exert. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your inkwell face down and exerted, and the other on the top of your deck. So, I mean, yeah, this is kind of cool, but again, slow. And do I really want to try to be ramping by exerting a character on turn 4 or on my 4th ink? Because you're probably ramping on turn 2 with Sapphire in any ink pairing. No, there are just better 4-cost cards to put in your deck at this point. if you're playing Sapphire and any other ink pairing with it. So I think this is a hard sell on making it its way into a competitive deck. We got a new 1-3 in Toulouse, Artistic Kitten. So vanilla 1-3. That's always nice to see new ones coming up of those. We also have Marie, Favorite Kitten, a 2-cost inkable 1-2 body that says whenever this character quests, you may give chosen character -2 this turn, and it quests for 2. This card is actually half decent, especially in Ruby Sapphire variants. The issue, again, comes down to, well, I'll just play Sapphire Coil. And for my 2-drops, Sapphire Coil and Tipo are still going to reign supreme. So this card doesn't really fit in, and it really only fits in to the decks that benefit off of the strength-based removal, which at this point in time is really just Ruby. So if you're playing Ruby Sapphire, there are just better options than Marie to play, in my opinion. Yes, it's nice for it to quest for 2. Could you play this in a more aggressive, less item-focused version of Ruby Sapphire? Yes. But is that really going to be better? It's going to be more budget-friendly, but is it going to be better than the item-based versions? Probably not. And the only reason I say that is because if you don't want to shell out the money for the new Tamatoas and the new Scrooge McDucks, you play a more aggro-oriented version or a more aggressive version of Ruby Sapphire, and you don't have to play those cards, and you don't play items, and therefore you're supplementing the Sapphire Coil with the Marie, and you're getting benefit off the Marie because then you're playing things like Small Sisu, Big Sisu, Madame Medusa, etc. For the removal. The issue is this is a character, so it's much more susceptible to removal and harder to proc, right? Because it has to survive and quest than the Sapphire Coil, which is an item, harder to remove, less things to target it to remove, and it triggers on ink, so you don't even have to quest with it. So there's that difference as well. Next up, we got Pepper, a 3-cost inkable 2-2 quick thinking puppy. In the nick of time, whenever one of your puppy characters is banished, you may put that card into your inkwell face down and exerted. So pretty cool. Yeah, good for the casual puppy deck. Could be a little competitive, which is nice. Next up, you got Freckles, a 2-cost inkable 2-2 body that says when you play this character, chosen opposing character gets -1 this turn. So again, not anything too relevant, just shares the puppy archetype. So not even sure if you'd played in the puppy archetype. Next up, you got a new Honey Lemon, Chemistry Whiz. A 2-cost inkable 2-2. Whenever you play a Floodborn character, if you use Shift to play them, you may remove 2 damage from chosen character. Quest for 1. Not relevant in the least, in my opinion. Next up, we got a generic Robin Hood, Eye for Detail, a 3-cost inkable 3-3 body with support and quest for 1. So generically, okay, it has support, but I mean, my 3-3 bodies, there's when you look at for example, Amethyst, they have Crab and they have White Rose. They're just so much better than this. I mean, I wish support did a little bit more, honestly, but we are already locked into this ability. I think, it needed another relevant ability to make it, playable, which is a shame because it's a Robin Hood card and Robin Hood is amazing. But to be fair, he did get his flowers with the legendaries and whatnot. Next up, we got Penny the Orphan, a 2-cost inkable 2-1 body that quests for 2. So, like an Oswald almost. Well, you have a hero character and play this character gains ward. This is a good card for Sapphire aggro decks for sure. A lot of good heroes in Sapphire and in Steel if you play Sapphire Steel or Sapphire Amber. A lot of good heroes there as well. Yeah, this is a great addition to the hero deck. And having ward, you have a hero on 1, you play this on 2, your opponent can't deal damage to this thing most likely, or that early in the game because of the ward. So yeah, you just guarantee 2 lore. Really nice. Yeah, a pretty good card for the hero deck in my opinion. Next up, we've got our other Sapphire Steel card, and unfortunately, it looks not so great. We got a Lady Cluck, Protective Confidant. Okay, or Confident. A 2/7 body that quests for 1, has Bodyguard and Ward. Or I guess never mind. It's not as bad as I thought. It has Ward. Okay, I take it back. A 5-cost inkable, so giving me vibes of Chenpo, which was what, a 4/7. That has Bodyguard. Obviously, Chenpo. What was Chenpo? Holy crap! How do I not remember what Chenpo was? Of course, I spelled the name wrong. Can I just search Po? That's not gonna work, right? It is a 4/7. Okay. But it does not have ward. But I would say that Lady Cluck needs the ward because at the 2 strength, she's very susceptible to getting just obliterated by any of the Ruby Sapphire decks with all of their strength based removal. So the only thing that takes this out really is Sisu, big Sisu, which, you know, I would have liked to see this as a 3/7 for that reason, but then it might have been too good into Ruby Sapphire. But I mean, you could argue that Sapphire Steel needs that anyways. It needs good ways to beat Ruby Steel, and this could help. I mean, it still doesn't get around to Be Prepared, and those decks are probably still running 3, if not 4 Be Prepared. So yeah, it's an interesting card for Sapphire Steel. You could even argue you play this in the aggro variants, because of the ward and the bodyguard. Like, it's just protecting your board very nicely, and it's hard to run over. But again, like, you think like Maui and things like that, they're just gonna like throw bodies into this and just take it out anyways. It can't get Sapphire Coil down in opposing Sapphire matchup. So like, you know, inking and then throwing a big character into it and taking no damage back isn't a thing, which is nice. So it has some merit, I guess you could say. And an uncommon too, pretty good. Next up, we got a new rare Jasmine, Inspired Researcher, a 5-cost uninkable 3/5 body. Whenever this character quests, if you have no cards in your hand, draw a card for each ally character you have in play, and it quests for 2. For some reason, they want that Sapphire Steel specific Jasmine to work with Hey. It's also an ally, so you'll draw cards for that. So is there a case to be made to make an ally deck around the Sapphire Steel pairing? Maybe. Next up, we've got a 4-cost inkable Jebediah Farnsworth Expedition Cook. 3 strength, 3 willpower, quest for 1, has support. When you play this character, chosen character gains resist +1 until the start of your next turn. Not bad, but again, hard to make this work in any deck. You know, it's just hard to replace anything for that card. And again, I don't really see this card being a build around or anything like that. We got a new Baymax in a rare, a 3/5 body once again with support. When you play this character, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Floodborn character, put it into your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So it costs 5. It's a 3/5 body. It quests for 1. If it quested for 2, it actually might be worth playing. But again, it's a scry 4. Pick up a certain kind of card. You know, Ariel is Song, Scrooge McDuck is now items, and you have Baymax for Floodborns. The issue is Ariel costs 3, Scrooge McDuck is 4 or free, like we already ranted on for a long time, and then Baymax just has to pay. You have to pay 5. I mean, to be fair, like, if you're looking for a specific Floodborn, right, to close out the game, it's usually not until later in the game anyways, and this card can still help facilitate that on a body, which is not the worst, but again, I think it's a hard sell compared to the other cards you could be playing in the 5 slot in things like Emerald, Sapphire, where you'd probably want to play this the most, since that there does seem to be some legs behind a Floodborn oriented version of that deck. Next up, we've got Maid Marian, a 4-cost inkable 3/3 body that quests for 2. So just, you know, decent stats all around, and I'm happy that she got a super rare. You know, from Robin Hood, love Maid Marian. During an opponent's turn, whenever one of your ally characters is damaged, deal 1 damage to chosen opposing character. So that's a really niche ability that probably doesn't come up at all, really. And then your character's name, Lady Cluck, gain resist +1. So that synergizes with the bodyguard ability, which I guess fits into the character archetype if she protects the Maid Marian. So kind of cool synergy and cards there, but not a card that's going to be too relevant, I don't think. I mean, the stats are okay, but these abilities are very niche, and so for that reason, I just don't really see it playing too much of a role. It is a hero and a princess, so that's pretty cool as well. And that's going to do it for the characters. We spent a lot of time on that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the actions and items now. So we got Water Has Memory, 1-cost uninkable action. Look at the top 4 cards of chosen player's deck. Put 1 on top of their deck and the rest to the bottom of their deck in any order. So this is interesting. It's hard to say if this card would see any play. Maybe in the Sapphire Ruby Shark variant if you're going really aggressive with the actions. But even then, like, I would say it's very limited. You could also maybe argue that, like, I don't even know if you would, but like an action discard version of Sapphire Emerald to manipulate their draws after you've discarded their hand could be something as well. Like, this card can help you obviously stall out the game for a turn against your opponent, preventing them from top decking like a game-winning card. But it's so niche because you need to have it at the right moment. It's uninkable, so overall I don't think it sees very much play, but it's not necessarily a bad card. Next up, we've got All Is Found. Pretty awesome enchanted. And very good artwork, actually. Whoever did this art, I'm really a fan of how they captured like the singing of the song and the kids being in like it's really good artwork. I'm really impressed that they were able to capture this in that art. It really feels like you're watching the live motion of the song happening. But yeah, a 5-cost inkable song. Put up to 2 cards from your discard into your inkwell face down and exerted. So this is a very good card. The issue is by the time you hit 5, how much do you really want to continue to ramp? If you're back on Fishbone Quills, if you're on item variants, you probably don't need that. Maybe in the Shark variants of Ruby Sapphire, you could play this card. This is a rare that's also in the starter deck, which is good. I don't think you need to play this in too much else. Like you could play it in Sapphire Emerald, because when you ink Geyser, you can get additional cards back to your hand afterwards. But again, that's so combo oriented, and are you like you really would only play this card if you really feel the need to aggressively continue to ramp after you already have ramped like once or twice with like Tipo and Fishbone Quills and things like that. It's not a bad card, but like, while you're doing this, your opponent is probably going to be pushing to win the game. So it's like, unless you're setting up for something big, which to be fair, you could do in the Ruby Sapphire variant where you lore drain, because then you can claw back the lore that they're gaining. And then this card just sets you up for the end game. And that's why I said I think in like the Shark variant you could probably play this, but in general I don't think most Sapphire decks will. Now we get to what I think is the best card in Sapphire from this set, in Sapphire Coil. Better than the Scrooge, better than the Tamatoa. And it's only an uncommon. Yeah, during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may give chosen character -2 strength this turn. Not once per turn. If you have 2 in play, you can give -4. If you're ramping and you ink twice during your turn, you can give -4 off 1. If you have 2 in play and you ink twice, you can give -8 across the board, or to any characters you want. It can be your own characters, it could be your opponent's characters. So why this is important is because you can make your own characters or your opponent's characters trigger things like the Muses in Emerald Sapphire with Sapphire Coil. Say if I have a card I want to bounce back to my hand, I ink, use Sapphire Coil, reduce my character by 2. Now it can be procced with the Muses if I sing a song or whatever. Or reduce my opponent's character, bounce it with the Muses when I sing a song. Lot of interactions here. Obviously the main one is what you've seen if you've watched my gameplay videos with Sapphire Ruby. But this card is a problem. It's a very powerful card. It does a lot for Ruby Sapphire. It does a lot for Emerald Sapphire as well, in my opinion, if you're going to go like the song-oriented route. It's the best coil. It's probably the best card in Sapphire. It's probably the best card in the whole set. It's probably the most meta-relevant card in the whole set. I'll leave it there. Next up, we got Baymax Charging Station, a 3-cost inkable item. Not too good, unfortunately. Whenever you play a Floodborn character, if you use Shift to play them, you may draw a card. It would have been, if it was a 1-cost item, I mean, maybe it would be too strong. 2-cost item inkable. And it has to be with the Shift, which is what hurts it a lot. Because the Floodborn Emeralds, I mean, everyone's using it in Emerald Sapphire. Yeah, the Floodborn version of Emerald Sapphire could play this. I just think 3 is way too expensive. Thinking how you could make this viable. Like one is you could abuse it too much at a 1-cost item. If you remove the Shift to play them and kept it as a 3-cost, you could make it work. If you made it a 1-cost item that's uninkable and kept this, it possibly could work as well, because then you just get more Hiram fodder as well. If you don't get if you see this early and it's useless, you can still get utility off of it by using it with Hiram, versus being it being a 3-cost card. Like, it hurts. I think it's hard to make a sell on this card. I would say in your deck, because you really only played in Sapphire Emerald, where you play a Floodborn variation. Can't really see you playing a Floodborn deck with Sapphire and any other ink pairing right now. And yeah, that's going to be it. So a very interesting set. very interesting ink for this set, I should say. Um, and yeah, a lot of impactful cards, good dual ink cards, good solo Sapphire cards. I would say that Sapphire is the clear winner. I wouldn't go so far to say it's going to be a tier 0 format though, because I do think some of the Amethyst decks, especially Amethyst Steel, can definitely get underneath uh, red blue and even have some play into the mid and late games to win the game because of the non-questing sources of lore, so many of them that they have. Um, that being said, though, I mean, the other variations of red blue, like the Maui Shark variation that can check lore by reducing lore or draining lore, is still going to be around and is still going to be very powerful in the meta, and it counters some of that purple stuff that you would see. But yeah, it's I would say it's the winner. It definitely got the best cards in the set, and definitely the most meta impactful cards in the set. So it'll be interesting to see how the meta continues to develop. But this is my review of Sapphire. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. And we have one more to go in Steel. Thank you again. Quantum is out.